So now let me ask the follow-up question to Jeff. Are people using those trails now that 96% of people are near them?
I believe so, or at least they say they are. When we do projects out in different communities in Indiana and talk about the recreation facilities and amenities that are most important to them, trails almost always come up as one of the most popular facilities that a city can have. And when we talk about the different uses that residents engage in through biking, through hiking, through running or walking, trails are always the most popular. And we've seen the use of trails increase quite a bit over the last 10 years or so. Again, as more people are trying to lead a healthy lifestyle or find alternative ways of transportation, they get out there and they use the trails more and more.
All right, I want to get back to this in just 1 minute, but we have to go over to Sarah Whitmire in the WFIU studios with her guest. Sarah?
Thanks, Stan. Joining me on the phone now is Eric Oberg from the Midwest Rails to Trails Conservancy. Thanks for joining us, Eric.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I want to start talking about just how do you work with communities if they want to convert an old railway into a trail system?
Nick, I'll start with you and we go down the line.
Well, it seems to follow the same script. We get calls from all over the Midwest. We're Rails to Trails Conservancy is a national nonprofit. Our Midwest office here works in 7 upper Midwest states, and we get calls from large cities like Indianapolis to small towns, you name it, and it's usually a city council, a chamber of commerce, a group of citizen activists that have this great idea. They've been to places like Bloomington, like Indianapolis, places that have great trails, and they say, hey, we want that in our community. And so they look us up, they give us a call, we come out and do presentations, whether it's at their city council meetings or they'll just have a special public meeting one evening in their town hall, and we'll come give PowerPoint presentations, kind of show them what these look like, walk them through the process a little bit, and then try to just help them along the way.
So say you're successful and you help develop a trail in a community. Who then owns the trail when you're finished?
It's a local ownership issue. Now, there's so many different ownership structures. It can be owned by a local park district, whether it's a city park, county parks. Some long-distance trails that cross multiple jurisdictions are state parks. There's quite a few instances of state parks taking over long trails that go through multiple counties and multiple jurisdictions. But it's typically some sort of public parks ownership. That's the usual end game for these trails.
And they handle the maintenance, the upkeep, then?
Exactly, they do. And there's plenty of instances as well where the park district may be the official owner and manager, but there's great friends groups that pop up that help get these established, help get them built, and then especially over the last 3, 4, 5 years with some of the budget issues that local and state agencies have come under, these friends groups are really becoming more and more important because they can rally local folks that are willing to go out and do some of the maintenance, maybe do some citizen patrolling and things like that along the trails. So a lot of these friends groups are really helping out public agencies to allow some of this to keep going as budgets are getting strained more and more. So those things are really taking off.
Now, some of these trails do receive federal funding, but we know there have been stories of politicians seeking to remove federal funding from these trails and pedestrian and walkway systems. To what extent are they funded federally?
Well, the vast majority of trails get some federal funding. Most of that is funneled through state DOTs and DNRs. I mean, by far the largest pool of money is the Transportation Enhancement Fund, which is administered through Department of Transportations around the country. Recreational trail funds are usually DNR administered. The Safe Routes to School program is another one that has really helped in the last 6 or so years get trails on the ground. But as most people in the trail community know, we are now working on more than 2 years since the last surface transportation bill expired. We've been working on continuing resolutions. Just this past week, the Senate has dropped an outline for their new surface transportation bill. The House of Representatives, Chairman Mica from Florida, just dropped his bill almost 2 weeks ago. We haven't, the Senate bill is not completely written, the House bill is, and it completely takes out all federal funding, all dedicated federal funding. So that's something that our organization, along with our other national partners, are working pretty hard on right now. we have a lot of faith in the Senate that they're going to be fighting for these programs, and in reconciliation we'll see funding upheld. But there's certainly an attack on trail and alternative transportation funding happening right now.
Now, when you're talking about the same transportation dollars that can go into funding roadways, how do you convince politicians such as Senator Mica in Florida that it's worth investing in trails?
Sure. Well, we've spent quite a few years. We've spent the last 4 years as an organization. This has been one of our #1 priorities. We've put a lot of time and resources into gearing up for this fight. We knew it was going to be a fight. And we put together a lot of resources. We worked with a lot of people from all over the country. We worked with folks out of Indianapolis very, very closely. We worked with people all over the place to show why it's important. We created a report about 2 years ago called Active Transportation for America. It's really the first nationwide report that put quantifying data showing what the return on investment for active transportation has been. In your conversation before I came on, I know there was a little bit of talk about economic impacts of trails. We've quantified that as much as we can. We also do individual trail economic impact studies around the country to just show how much money is coming in from these. And then then it gets very easy when you take these and you can show that a trail has a payback in 2 years. The development cost of a trail has an economic impact payback in 2 years of the entire construction cost, and you just ask them, show me another transportation project that has a return on investment that quickly, and they can't. We've also had a huge effort in Congressman Mica's home district. We've got dozens of letters of resolution. We've got resolutions passed by local townships and cities. We've had mayors sign letters. His own home constituents now have sent dozens of letters through Rails to Trails Conservancy, saying that they want dedicated funding preserved, that they don't agree with his plan. So, when you get to a local level, people get it. It seems that transferring that to the national level is where the disconnect is. So, instead of us going in, we're making sure all our local partners, who are their constituents, are getting to them saying, no, this is important. This is part of our economic engine. This is part of what's going to take us out of the problems we're in now. Okay. Cutting it is the worst thing we can do. So,
well, Eric, unfortunately, that's all the time we have, but thank you so much for joining us. Back to you, Stan.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm glad Eric mentioned at the end there the whole idea of economic development, because I wanted to touch on that. And Mick, we'll start with you. He said there have been a number of studies done that show that trails are this economic driver, that investment comes back to a city in a short period of time. And my question on these studies is always, how accurate can they be? Because you take into a lot of account of things that you are guessing to be true, but you're not 100% sure are true. What do you see, for instance, in Bloomington in terms of the studies that you're privy to?
Property values go up around the trail from the previous value that was documented before the trails went in to post-trail development. You see that the value of the properties, the sale prices go up. You see reinvestment in retail and housing product and business development, and that generates economic impact for the community in a lot of different ways. Tourism can increase. Hard to pin that all on trail development, but it's one of the many mechanisms that we would argue makes our community a better place to visit, where we hope that the visitors spend some money while they're here. And to Eric's point about the local people get it and understand the value of trails and how can we get that nationally, our department in Bloomington does a survey every 5 years, a statistically valid survey of our community. And in each of the 2 last cycles of 5-year surveys, the #1 amenity that our citizens said they wanted was walking and biking trails. Hence the reason we've been actively building so many trails. It's not even a close second. Anything else that ranks on those surveys is far below walking and biking trails. So the #1 form of exercise for most people is walking and biking for pleasure, and hence the reason for the interest in development of trails. The other economic thing that I would point out is we had a person who had some property in a rural section of town when we created one of our first trail systems in Bloomington called the Clear Creek Trail, and he was very resistant to selling his property, and once the property was acquired, he was resistant and concerned about what negative impacts it would have on his property value. 2 years after the trail was developed, he sold all of his land around it and was a millionaire and retired.